which is sponsored by the European something council. Sorry, it's a pan-European project. I'm sure Dr. Elbaz will be able to correct me there. Anyway, without further ado, over to you, Dr. Elbaz. Thank you very much. Oops.
Oh.
Can't hear you.
I don't know why that happened. I muted her.
There we go.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, no.
Now let me make sure you should be able to
That'd be the only glitch we have tonight.
Indeed.
Right, you should be able to share your screen now as well, okay?
Yes, great. So first of all, I want to say thank you to Harif for having me and to everybody for being here. And I will, here we go, we're gonna go share screen.
Uh-oh.
No, darling.
Yeah, yeah, there we go. Yeah, you've got it?
Got it.
So I wanted to talk today about this concept of power, of music in Jewish Morocco. And I'm sure that you've heard about Jewish Moroccan music. Some of you may have sung it in synagogues or heard it in concerts, but I want to take one step further back and think about not just the music itself, but its function in the relationality of Jews with other Jews in Morocco, with other Jews in the diaspora, and with the rest of the Moroccan population in Morocco. So that's why I'm kind of giving it another twist today. And what I'm going to do is actually start with something that might seem a little bit off topic, but you will see why I'm getting there once we go through it. So, oh, wait a minute. How do I go to the next slide? Here we go. But for some reason, it's actually cutting off at the top. Is it cutting off at the top for everybody? It looks to me like it's a little bit cut off.
It's copying the screen from your computer.
Yeah, I know. I don't know how to undo that. Wait, hold on, if we can go backwards. Well, yeah. We go. If I can do this.
That's perfect.
Yeah, is that better?
Yeah.
Okay.
Leave it now.
So I'm actually starting with the idea of the Sephardic tree. And because actually the Sephardic tree, if you look through it, goes all the way to the very last sephira on the very bottom, right under his hand, right there, and that is the sephira of Malchut. Malchut, which has to do with kingship, I guess is the direct translation, but it's sovereignty, and it also has to do with existence in the world. And it's an iconography that actually I discovered in the last couple of years is completely similar to the Porphyrian tree, the Arbol Porfiriana, which was put together in this visual imagery around this same time in the 15th, 16th centuries, but existed as a concept much earlier. And the reason that this is interesting is because we start to get these images of Sefirot very much as a part of the philosophy and the way of life of Jews in Morocco. So Jews in Morocco are very, very, very connected to all the Kabbalistic teachings and as well to the practices of singing, of music, of singing psalms, of for example, the Tu B'Shvat Seder, which is a very Kabbalistic Seder, is done every year. It's one of the big holidays in Jewish Morocco. And so there's this complete integration in Moroccan Jewish life with the understanding of what this way of explaining the world is. And so I wanted to discuss this a little bit. Let's see if I go to the next. Yes. So we have this this idea of Keter at the very top, which is the Sephira above consciousness. And then we have the intellectual ones, which are Chokhmah and Bina. So Keter is the crown, right? And Chokhmah and Bina are wisdom and insight, we could say. And then we have the emotional Sefirot. We go through all those emotional Sefirot until we arrive at the very bottom to Malchut, which is this sovereignty or kingship. And this tree, this schema for visual representation of the scale of being, is actually also associated with astronomy, with philosophy, and all these disciplines of the Middle Ages. And the Sefirot converges this medieval knowledge, which is interested in distinctions and contrasts. So we see the circles and the lines, right? And it's like a genealogical doctrine of being, which is, I'm reading in the words of Yossi Chahes, who has a really interesting article on this, where the philosophers had learned to arrange visually in space. So we think about the Porphyrian tree as an arrival down from intellect into action, but then also in Jewish life, we have the genealogical trees and the ketubot. And in Jewish Morocco, we have a plethora of ketubot that actually have trees drawn on them. And in these ketubot, we have also the genealogies of the people that are going to get married. And those people that will get married then will eventually have the next generation, which is then the key to the tree of transmission, right? The next level down. So we have these categories that I've already discussed here. But the thing that I think is interesting, if we think about this with music, is what happened after the expulsion of the Jews from Spain. Because after the expulsion of the Jews from Spain, there was a whole group of Jewish philosophers that moved to Italy, and they started writing about the system of the Sefirot. We also have Shlomo Alkabetz, who has written poetry, and Moshe Cordovero, who wrote about the Sefirot, how to magically and theurgically impact the world around them through music. In 17th century North Africa, we start finding explicitly looking tree diagrams for Andalusian music. So for Muslim music, we find tree diagrams of the modes of music. They call it the Shaharat al-Tubu. So, and then we also have much later, like 200 years later, we have the trees of flamenco music, where we have all the modes of flamenco music in trees. So we have this relationship of the music that has left from Al-Andalus, right? And all of a sudden their theorizing of it starts to have a connection to these trees and to the way of expressing their beingness in the world through a philosophical organization. The connection of music to power was inscribed into Kabbalistic theory by Isaac Abarbanel, Meir Ibn Gabay, Shlomo Alkabetz, and Moshe Cordovero in the 16th century. So their system works like this. The top three sefirot from the Kabbalistic tree are considered to be separate from the others. They stand as connected to the superconscious and the conscious, thus intellectual sefirot, as we talked about earlier. The top one is keter, the others are chokhmah, wisdom, and bina, understanding. And music thus inhabits the realm of the supraconscious intellect, the world of emanation. The next set of sefirot are considered to be the emotional ones and are love, justice, beauty, endurance, splendor, and bonding. Power, or malchut, literally kingship, is found at the bottom of the tree and is the receptacle for all the energies which have been refined. Power inhabits the world of action. To arrive from one level to the other, the adept must go through the creation and formation of wisdom and understanding, and through time and space. Around 1560, a mere 58 years after the expulsion from Spain, the book Sefer Cheshek Shelomo, the Book of Solomon's Desire on Song of Songs, written by Yohanan Alemano, an associate of Giovanni Pico della Mirandola in Italy, as well as soon after the book Nigun Haolam, Melody of the World by Isaac Arama. They were written soon after Marsilio Ficino's writings in Florence on music and magic. In these musical books in Hebrew, the authors are building systems of approaching music through the Sephirotic tree and its capacity to draw down the divine power through song to thus impact the world through focused singing. Sephardi Jews in Morocco in the early 20th century and until today often sang in the palace, placing their voices and their sung prayers for the protection of the monarch and his royal line. This theurgic singing is enacting what has become an integral part of music making for many traditional Jews and stems from these original texts written in the 16th century on the direct impact of Malchut through Tiferet, beauty. This is explained by an unnamed author who lived through the expulsion and wrote Kaf Hakteoret, the hand of incense, who expounds that through the sacred name of God, singing psalms protects against evil, just as King David did through his harp by accessing the Sephira of Tiferet, of beauty, to impact Malchut, power. This is from Moshe Idel's 1982 book, article. So Sephardi Kabbalists wrote that all creation is made of a careful combination of every element with their own singular percentage. In the book Etz HaChaim, the Tree of Life, written by Chaim Vital in the 16th century, the foremost student of both Moshe Cordovero, the Ramak, and Isaac Luria, the Ari, the Kabbalistic leader from Sfat from the 16th century, Lurianic Kabbalah teaches that varying percentage of one element over another is what creates different personalities, physicalities, and emotions. In other words, every single aspect of creation has all four elements in a variety of different combinations, and it is the different percentage in each one that creates its individuality, strength, and weakness. That is how this table of elements, world, sefirot, and letters of God's name, interact with the implementing of intention into the created reality of the world of power. So now we're going to go into the reality of what is actually happening on the ground in Morocco. And I need to keep an eye on the time. Okay, so this is a concert that happened in one of the Jewish clubs in Casablanca called the Souk. It's a tennis club, but they have a hall, and we started a series of concerts. This one was actually a concert with Chaim Botbol, who is like the Frank Sinatra of Moroccan Jews. He was the favorite singer of the previous king, Hassan II, and is a very important figure in Moroccan popular culture until today. And Shaheen, his name is escaping me right now, Omar Shaheen is the other singer, who's a Muslim. So here we have actually a beginning of Muslim singers in Morocco singing Jewish repertoires that aren't just popular music sung by Jews, but actually here in this case right here, he was actually singing a song to a Moroccan tzaddik, to a Jewish tzaddik, to a saint, in Hebrew and in Judeo-Arabic. And the interesting thing was that at this concert, at that moment, I was singing next to an older Jewish lady who turned to me and said, is he Jewish? And I said, no, he's not Jewish. She said, well, why is he singing the song to the Sadiq? Which explains to me that this is a new phenomenon. This is something that is just recently starting to happen now because we're moving into a different time period, I would say, of the existence of Jews in Morocco. There are less Jews in Morocco. The generations that are there are mostly older. And because of this, there's actually, not just because of this, but one of the reasons or one of the consequences of this is that there is a very active push from the government and from the media to actually make Jewish culture, music, cuisine more public. And so Jewish musicians are in the public marketplace and the public sphere a lot more. So we have these different spaces where Jews perform music. And as you see, I've split it into public exo groups, so outside of the group, endo group, public endo group, so synagogue liturgy, for example. So that concert was a public concert outside of the group, either radio, television, music on films on Jews. But you can also have an endo group, public performance, so the synagogue liturgy, life cycle party, a holiday school or synagogue performance, and pilgrimages, performances at pilgrimages. Then we have private mixed gender performances, singing while preparing matzah. This doesn't happen anymore. It used to happen. Home-based rituals, Passover or Shabbat, private home concerts, which still occur today, and singing on the bus that's going to a pilgrimage, that also still happens. And private separate gender, so all women or all men, ritual bath, pre-wedding performances, home-based women gathering, quotidian music making, and singing during labor. There's songs that women sing to other women while they're in labor. So these are all performance spaces that show us these different ways of splitting the kinds of repertoires that are sung, because there are certain repertoires that are in these very private spaces, especially the repertoires that are in the private single gender space. Those are never sung on stage. The ones that are sung on stage usually are the ones that are either private mixed gender or public exo group. So usually public endo group repertoires, so performances, music from the liturgy, it's not on stage for mixed Jewish and Muslim audiences. So it's interesting to see how actually there are very specific contexts and spaces and times and moments for the performance of Jewish music, because it's actually related to the exposing of the Jewish voice in the public sphere, and the presenting of it, and a performativity of what it is to be a Moroccan Jew. So what it is to be a Moroccan Jew is performed in this kind of manner. We have a public exo group here. We have one concert in Fez right here to the left, another concert in a huge outdoor concert festival at the top with Lior El Maliah, who's a Moroccan Israeli performer. And they were performing Andalusian music. And here at the bottom, there's a concert. I'm actually singing in that concert, right, standing in the middle, but that was at the Institut du Monde Arabe. So at the Arabic World Institute in Paris, during an exhibit that was prepared in 2014, I believe, on Morocco. And so there was a very public performance of Moroccan Jewish music as part of this international exhibit. So we have this other kind of performance. I'm going to show you a clip. These are two very, very important figures in Moroccan music. To the left, you have Raymond El Bidawiya. El Bidawiya means from Casablanca, and she lives now in Israel, but she's a very, very famous singer of Shabi, of Moroccan popular music. And Hajj Al Hamdawiya, who's a Moroccan Muslim woman who's like the matriarch of Moroccan popular music. She's in her 90s, I believe, already. So I would like for you to see this. Oh, and there.
Writing's not that easy.
Sorry about this. Oh, let's see. How do we get there? Yes, and skip ad. Here we go. So you can see that this is a huge event. There were like 4,000 people in the audience, and it was the closing of the Festival of Andalousie Atlantique, which is held in Essaouira every year under the auspices of the palace. It's organized by the team of Andre Azoulay at Essaouira Mogador, and it's a large and very public facing presentation of Moroccan Jewish culture. Here we have another, this one is just a photograph. Here we have Botbol again with Coco Gems, the man standing next to him in the black suit, which you'll hear a video of him later. And he is actually Israeli, Coco also, but comes from the Middle Atlas in Morocco. So this is one of the things, is this movement between Israel, Morocco, France, and Spain, Canada as well. There's this constant movement. Sometimes people have families in different places, so they might actually live part of the year in different places and perform in different places, all the while coming back to Morocco and then doing a very public performance of their Maroccanité, of their Moroccanness. And one of the ways that the Maroccanité is performed the most is through music, and it's through music in the Arabic language, because when it's in the Arabic language, the rest of the Moroccan population can understand it and also feels that it's theirs. So this is one of these concerts at the Souk that you had seen earlier, but I wanted to show you the audience. This is a mixture of Jewish and Muslim audience members that have come to hear this series of concerts on Moroccan Jewish music. Then we have public endo group performances in the top left. We have at the Hilula, at a pilgrimage. Top right, we have in a synagogue. And the bottom left is another Hilula, but outside by the fire and the candles. And then at the bottom right is a school performance. Many of the school performances actually are and interestingly, the languages in all these places can be quite different. So the synagogue is obviously almost completely in Hebrew, but the school is almost completely in French, and sometimes even in English, and some Hebrew. And And at the pilgrimages, it's usually mostly in Arabic and some Hebrew. Then we have private mixed gender, private home concerts. These still happen, and this is the way that actually music used to happen in Morocco. There were no Morocco. It's interesting because there are not very many theaters in Morocco. There are hardly any small theaters or spaces for performances, because the tradition in Morocco has been that it's patrons that have the concerts in their homes, and that they invite the people to their homes, and it's a patron that then hosts a concert. So these patron hosted concerts are still happening in people's homes, and it's an occasion that where Muslims and Jews also come and spend time together enjoying this music that's of their traditions. We have here a photograph from the 1970s from a wedding. You see the audience members are sitting behind the performers, and it's an orchestra mixed Jewish and Muslim. This is a woman from the Sahara singing songs that she would usually only sing for during birthing, and she's singing it for a recording that I made, and her son is with her. He was enjoying it very deeply. But the interesting thing is that the songs that she knew to sing by heart were these very traditional women's Judeo-Arabic songs on birthing, and the songs about the saints. So these two things go together because fertility and sanctity go together. Then we have these private separate gender spaces, like before a wedding or after a wedding. This is a women's gathering where they would gather around to sing for the bride, to prepare her, but also the women would sing to the bride. And it's usually, as you can notice, it's mostly older women that are all married already, because through their voices, they would actually impact the body of the bride itself and the body of the couple. It was like an impregnation of bracha, of blessing onto the couple, as they're singing and performing these rituals during this very charged time of the life of the bride. So we have these moments, right? These performance moments, which are life cycle events, circumcisions, bar mitzvah, marriage, and death. Holidays following the lunar cycle, Shana, Sukkot, and Passover. Weekly and daily performances of prayers, Shabbat, and quotidian singing, which is songs that are funny, humor, they're moralistic, and these are songs that will do cement of the group. So here we have a bar mitzvah, and it's very interesting. We see the young boy, he's being carried in. You should be able to, oh, it's not going to play. And why is that? Oh, no. That is, yeah, well, I'm so very sorry this isn't playing, because there's as you take a look at the photograph, right behind him, the young boy to the left, are some very, very, very large trumpets. And those trumpets are actually, so this is a Moroccan Muslim band that is bringing in the bar mitzvah boy, and it's and they're blowing the trumpets for him, and they're singing this chant in Arabic for him. They bring him in to the center of the hall, where his grandmother, as you see on the top right, is waiting for him. She puts the henna on his hand, and then it is she that sings to him Yanes, which is a wedding song. She sings to him a wedding song because this, the bar mitzvah, is actually the moment when his sexuality opens up, when he becomes a man, and when he will have the impregnation of the energy of becoming a man that will then lead him to his wedding. So it's the grandmother, it's the older matriarch that then sings him the song. maybe at the end, if we can get back to that image, I'd love for you to see that. But so we have also punctuated space and time that enact relations of power. So in relations to the palace, for example, in relation to Jewish festivities, in relation to diplomats, the Spanish, French, or American diplomats in Morocco, in relation to civil society, and to the Jewish diaspora. So here, for example, is a photograph on the birth of the previous king, the celebration of the birth of the previous king. And if you see at the very bottom, so all the men that are seated, that's the orchestra. And at the very bottom, there are two men that are in the middle of the orchestra, I would say, they're dressed in black. Those are the Jewish singers. They were there and they were brought to the palace to sing to the future king when he was a newborn. And the man that is seated in the back with a striped djellaba, that was the king at the time, Mohammed V. So these are images that tell us about how the choreography of music and power worked even 80 years ago. This is a performance of Salim Halali, who's a very famous Moroccan, Algerian singer who made his fame in Morocco, actually at in the 1950s at Israel Independence Day at one of the Jewish clubs, the Alliance, the Club de l'Alliance in Casablanca. Very interesting because he was very public facing and very friendly with the Muslim world, and actually not always welcome to sing in synagogue because they felt that his voice didn't he sang too often in cabarets with drinking and with questionable things that were happening, so he should not be the one to lead the prayers for everybody else, let's just say that. But here he was singing at a very Zionist event when that was pretty risque in the Morocco of that period. Here we have some examples of concerts that happen in a synagogue at in the top. That was a performance for the US ambassadors in 2013 that I organized before their departure. And in 2016, this Jewish group of paitanim, of liturgical singers, was invited to perform at the consular residence, Villa Mirador in Casablanca for Ramadan. So they always have this interfaith Ramadan concert. And so this year that group performed at that concert. So here I would like to see Coco Dams, who you saw in the picture earlier, and this photograph that you see, he's holding a Moroccan flag as he's singing, and he really performs his Moroccanness. You're going to see that in this video that I'm going to show you, because in the video he stands in his apartment looking out to the corniche of Casablanca, and he sees the mosque, the large mosque, Hassan II Mosque, which is the most important demonstration of, I would say, religious power in Morocco today. And he's standing there looking at that, and then he goes in, he sings the song that he's singing, then he goes inside and is wearing a Saharan outfit. And so the Jews have been very vocal about the support of Moroccan Judaism and Moroccan Jewry to Morocco's territorial integrity as regards to the Western Sahara. And so he, in the song that has nothing to do with politics or the Sahara or anything, he makes allusion to that just through his dress. So I want you to see this, and let's see.
تبغيني القلب قول لي وش كتبغيني كتبغيني ولا لا كتبغيني ولا لا كتبغيني كتبغيني ولا لا كتبغيني يا حبيب القلب صارني حبيبي يا سيادي في كل مكان صارني حبيبي يا سيادي في كل مكان من حار الشوق لمحبة راني سهران من حار الشوق لمحبة راني سهران.
So here we have other examples. I know I realize that we're should move forward so that we can have time for questions. But here we have other examples of this Jewish liturgical singers group singing at a Ramadan after breakfast concert. So very interestingly, because Ramadan is usually considered to be the sacred month where the Muslims would not necessarily want to bring in Jewish repertoire into their sacrality. But in recent years, this group in Casablanca has started to have a series of concerts during Ramadan, and every year they invite the Jewish group to perform in one of the concerts as a showing of this diversity in Morocco. Let's see. Yeah. So we have other events like these, which are Jews together with Muslims having NGOs that they've started to fundraise and singing sometimes music in Hebrew, mixed Hebrew and Arabic, but it's never religious music. And it's always the tunes that Moroccan Muslims will know. So it's interesting to see how this performativity has to do with bringing back the Jewish Moroccan experience to something that is familiar to Moroccan Muslims, so that Moroccan Muslims understand that the Jewish experience in Morocco is Moroccan. This is the last image that I have for you. This was at a pilgrimage in Salé in 2019. And I thought it was quite interesting to see how actually the mechitza went down the middle to the point where actually none of the musicians could see the women and none of the women could see the musicians. The women were not happy about it, let me tell you. They were very vocal to me about it. And it was interesting to see that, but this actually has to do with the organizers who were not Moroccans living in Morocco. There were Moroccans living in France. So they were bringing in this French orthodoxy, which is different from Moroccan orthodoxy, and kind of imposing it even during the meal and the pilgrimage. And so this is a part of this negotiation with the diaspora and the showing of what Moroccan Judaism is to the diaspora of Moroccan Jews. So I think I will leave it here, because what I would like to do now is, let me see, stop screen share. And then that way we can actually have some questions and have a discussion. And I'm happy to speak about all sorts of other aspects that we didn't cover.
Well, can I kick off, Vanessa, with a question? All this mixed music in outside spaces, you say, has been happening in recent years. I mean, is this all the work of Andre Azoulay or do you think there's a popular movement to do all this?
Well, I think the thing is, it's not like it wasn't happening before. this mixed music in outside spaces was happening before. It was just part of Moroccan life because there were Moroccan Jewish musical superstars, and they were superstars from the beginning of the record industry. Actually, it was pushed by Moroccan Jews. So there were a huge quantity of Moroccan Jews that were very famous in the early part of in the 30s, the 40s, the 50s. So, and these concerts, it was more normal. The issue is now that we have such a reduced Jewish community and much less number of performers. So what happens? So it's either they bring the performers, the superstars from France or Toronto, Montreal, or Israel, or some of the performers that live in Morocco then actually end up performing a lot more. And there's a choreography around it that has to do with what people like Azoulay have been pushing for, and it is this this understanding by the wider Moroccan community of this time that doesn't know as many Jews anymore, because 70 years ago, every single Moroccan knew a Jew because it was their neighbor or their doctor or their jeweler or their teacher, and today it's almost none of the Moroccans that know a Jew anymore. So this is the difference. So because of that vacuum, now there's been the desire to turn up the volume, so to speak, and to have more of these performances that are less normal, happening in cabarets and cafes and weddings, and actually bring some more of these into festival venues, which are really much more choreographed, one could say.
Right. Ralph also remembers that Sami El-Moghrabi, who's a famous singer, sang at his bar mitzvah in Casablanca in 1950.
So
Ralph,
my question for Ralph is,
yeah.
do you have any photographs, and do you have any video, any kind of Super 8 or anything? Because I have started a project in 2014 called Khoya, Les Archives Sonores du Maroc Juif, Jewish Morocco Sound Archive. And we're gathering all sorts of sound material and visual material to actually turn into some kind of an online platform of all these events. So many people have Super 8s and cassettes and things that can be digitized, and then we can actually have this as a resource. So if you have anything, that would be amazing.
You can have my photo anytime.
Great.
Can you describe what it was like to have a bar mitzvah in the presence of this famous singer? How was it?
Well, it was like Paloma described. It was half French, half Moroccan, half Jewish. It was a great mixture. I remember it very, very, very clearly. We started with Moroccan music. Then we had Jewish music. And then at the end of the ceremonies, we had French music. It was very cosmopolitan type of thing. So unfortunately, I haven't got a video, but I can keep it to myself. It's all in my mind. And I do have photos which I can send to our friend. Yeah.
Great. Yeah, and this is a very important point. This I didn't talk about that today, but these different kinds of repertoires that have to do with different languages and that have to, I touched on it a bit, but this is its constant oscillation between the inside repertoire, the repertoire of the synagogue and of the family, and then the cosmopolitan, the repertoire that everybody on the street will know or that plays on the radio. And it's all a part of the Moroccan Jewish experience. It's not just the synagogue music or the home music. It's all there. It's part of the sonic entity of Jewish life in Morocco.
And is there a variation between Berber music and music in the cities, for instance? I mean, are there regional variations?
There are regional variations, there are family variations, there are variations from city to city, from town to town. It's very, there are aspects of music that are very, very, very local, and aspects of language. So the Amazigh languages in Morocco are actually very local. And even the Judeo-Arabic language is different in different parts of Morocco, because they bring in words from like, for example, in Meknes, they have a lot more Spanish words than even in Fez. They have less Spanish words in Fez, in the Judeo-Arabic. And the Berber music, the Amazigh music, has a lot of connection to poetry duels, to songs, a lot of humor, and kind of saying things to kind of push the other and then have the other respond. And it has to be in a certain kind of verse and a certain kind of form, a very performative, live, relational, interactive kind of musical performance.
And we have a question here from Simon Gabai. How far is Jewish music influenced by the Arabic music, such as makams and nagams?
So this is a whole other long question, because Jewish music in Morocco, or Moroccan music basically, doesn't really have maqam. Moroccan music has the nuba, right? The Andalusian music has the nuba, and it has rhythmic modes, but it doesn't connect to, it doesn't have the kind of quarter tones and microtonal issues that we have in, for example, in the Ottoman Empire, or in the Sharq, in the Middle East. So in that, and I think that it's actually related to where Morocco sits geographically. The fact that it's at the top, at the tip of Africa, connecting to Europe, but also to Africa, at the edge, at the western edge. So it has this this passageway position, that it's absorbed so many different migrations and cultural layerings, that we hear it in the music. So, but they did not bring in the Sharqi. They'll listen to it. So Kulthum and all this other Lebanese music, that people really listen to Egyptian music and all that, and they'll sing it. But that has to do with kind of connecting to Pan-Arabism and something else, that real Moroccan music, it's not about that.
And how much overlap is there between Moroccan, Algerian, and Tunisian music?
So Moroccan and Algerian music have quite a bit of overlap in texts and in melodies, and also because there was a lot of migration back and forth, actually. Even within the Jewish community, there's a lot. However, there are very distinctive genres that are connected, but that are slightly different. So Garnati, for example, is Algerian. It's also sung on the edge, on Oujda, which is right inside of the border in Morocco. And Arabo-Andalusian, Andalusi, is sung more in Rabat and in Fez and Tétouan. It's different from what is sung in Oujda. So it starts to shift. And the Ma'alouf then, that's sung in Tunisia, is really quite different. So they're connected maybe structurally and some of the modes, but it's different repertoires.
And Gloria asks, what is the connection between Moroccan Arabic music and Spanish Jewish music? Now that's quite a question, isn't it?
So, well, Spanish Jewish music, I'll make an exactitude here. We have the Spanish Jewish music that was in Spain, and that then left at the expulsion, and that went all throughout the Mediterranean basin. The issue, though, is that of that music, we only have the texts today. We are not exactly sure which of the melodies that we sing today are still some of those melodies from back then, if any. So the Arabic music, that the Andalusian music, we say that, and in the oral tradition in Morocco, it is said that it actually came from Al-Andalus, from what is today Spain, into Morocco, and that it hasn't changed. I'm not too sure about that. I think that change is inevitable. But the interesting thing is that there are textual images that are similar in the poetry of both of these repertoires. And there are some of the forms of having one kind of a text and a repetition of the melody over and over, which is also similar, which is kind of an epic storytelling type form. And there's this repertoire, this Arabic repertoire, that then would have portions in the vernacular. So they would have them in Spanish or in some other vernacular language, and that all similar happens in some of the Spanish Jewish music. So we have these structural similarities that we can trace. The issue is that the music, the melodies, we do not know, and we can't yet quite, maybe ever, make a hard and fast answer on this.
So they knew the lyrics, but not the tunes. So did they make up the tunes as they went along, or and keep the lyrics? Or
Well, we've kept the lyrics, and we believe that the tunes have changed. Mm-hmm. So because it's all been oral tradition, so it wasn't notated. Some of these tunes were actually written down in Spanish songbooks in the 16th, 17th centuries, but then the melodies that people in the early 20th century recorded from Jewish women in, for example, northern Morocco, in the Juderia, in Tetuan or Tangier or Larache, they're not necessarily that similar to what we have in the 16th century printed manuscript. So we can't really trace the lineage of the melodies yet.
Mm-hmm. Lily Shaw has a question about the influence of Ottoman music and instruments on Moroccan Jewish music. But of course, Morocco was part of the Ottoman Empire, was it?
No. So this is one of the big things about Morocco, that it's not part of the Ottoman Empire. The Ottoman Empire ended it at Algeria. And it's a source of pride to Moroccans that actually, because of that, there's maybe a specificity in Moroccan culture, because it did not have that political influence. However, one of the things that's interesting to know is that the Alliance Israélite Universelle school system had student or teachers that came from the Ottoman Empire that came to Morocco to teach, and they were young Jewish professors, and they came with their music that they knew, and sometimes they taught their music to their students. So we do have some songs from the Ottoman Empire, from the Jewish communities of the Ottoman Empire, that have been collected decades later in Morocco, and that some people thought that they were actually Moroccan traditions, but we found that it actually came through in that migration pattern.
And I just want to put in a plug for next week's event, which will be a celebration of the 160th anniversary of the Alliance Israélite Universelle. And I urge you all to come along. It'll be on Wednesday, next Wednesday, not on Tuesday, Wednesday the 25th. And it'll be on Zoom, obviously. And actually, Lawrence has found some extracts of the wonderful concert that Haim Botbol gave at SOAS in February of last year, before we all locked down.
You want me to play that?
So would you like to hear some of that?
Oh, that would be wonderful. Yeah, if everybody would. Yeah.
Music before.
Right, okay, give me another minute.
Okay, so sorry, that was the previous act to Hein Botbol.
Right, let's try this one.
علينا لندن كاملين الفرح في دار الأحباب الفرح في دار الأحباب يا رب تكمل بالخير عليه يا رب تكمل بالخير عليه قلبي خلي الحال يمشي في حاله خلي الحال يمشي على حاله وترى جميع القوى وصغالي ما قال.
Do people want me to play some other tunes as well? I've recorded various ones. Give me a thumbs up so I can see, Vanessa. Do you want to hear some more? You put yourself on mute. Right, okay. Can I ask you to unmute yourself? It's okay. Give me another second, darling. I wasn't expecting to do this. So sorry, I wasn't expecting to do this. So it's taking me a little bit of time to get it together.
Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. الله أكبر صوت الحسن زاهي لسانك يا صحراء فرحي يا أرض بلادي أرض الصبح هرقا صوت الحسن زاهي لسانك يا صحراء فرحي يا أرض بلادي أرض الصبح هرقا ورنا لازم يكبر بالسيرة الخضراء ورنا لازم يكبر الله 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 والنبي محمد سيف الله يحفظه الله
Vanessa, you should be unmuted. Hello?
Yeah, so the interesting thing about that song is that you'll probably hear, oh, is it still going? Yeah, it's a song that is about the Moroccan Sahara, and it's usually sung at the very end of every single concert that Jews are singing, where it's a mixed audience. So, and it really has to do with this cementing of allegiance to the Moroccan nation. And in fact, that last slide that I showed you at the very end with the mechitza in the middle, Michel Habitant, who was the singer that night, he sang Hashemu Melech, Hashemu Malach at first, and then he did Allahu Akbar, but he was a little bit like worried that the French Jews might not understand what was going on. So it's quite interesting. I'm glad that you showed that one, because it's.
Sorry, playing with two computers, but I can't put them both on at once. Did you get feedback?
Actually,
I've got more. When you come to London after lockdown, I'll give you a copy of everything.
Actually, I was going to be very cheeky, Vanessa. I know you sing. I was going to ask you, would you sing something for us?
With
something short?
Would you like something in Judeo-Spanish or Judeo-Arabic?
Whatever you want.
Let's see.
Judeo-Arabic, perhaps?
Judeo-Arabic, okay. Here we go. I'll do a short song that is similar to Echad Biyodea, so if you know it in Hebrew, but it's actually sung for Havdalah. Kanadrihu nadrihu nibdahu wal-wahad wal-wahadu Allah Habib ala Eliyahu Habiban dana simbanahu Kanadrihu nadrihu nibdahu والجوج مسوحر والوحد الله حبيب لا إلياه حبيبا دنا سبحانه كان ندريه نبداه والتلتا هم لبوت والجوج مسوحر والوحد الله حبيب لا إلياه حبيبا دنا سبحانه كان ندريه نبداه والأربع هم لبوت والثلاثة هم لبوت والجوج مستوحر والواحد الله حبيب لا إلياه حبيبا دنا سبحانه. I only went up to 4, it goes up to 10. That's a real concert. Whenever I do a real concert, I still haven't sung in London, believe it or not. I've been here. So that's one day that has to come. And one in Judeo-Spanish I see in the chat. So let's have a short, let's see. Ki tora la nunitana que migdala Lebanon mero seir vejermon tasuri miro shamanai tora la nunitana esta es la excelencia fuente de aguas muy claras. Señor, venga a nuestras caras, todos hagan reverencia. Y toda la nunita, sanando con Zemirot, todas las mujeres. Señor, venga el Mashiach. Sepamos, Señor Adonai, y toda la nunita, y toda la nunita que migdala Lebanon, mero seir vejermon, asuri miro shamanai, y toda la nunita.
Oh, that was absolutely lovely. Thank you very much.
Yes, I see.
Vanessa. And that was for Simchat Torah, is that right?
Simchat Torah and also Shavuot.
And also Shavuot.
If you want to put yourself on mute, I'll do it.
No, I think we called it, didn't they? And that is Castilian, not Ladino or anything like that.
Yeah, it's Haketia. It's
Haketia.
Put yourself on mute, darling.
Moroccan Judeo-Spanish.
we go.